you're worried about today, but you're always planning for the future in property management.
All right, welcome to the Investment Property Geeks of Charlotte. I'm your host, Chris.
And Jesse, co-host.
Awesome, Jesse. And let's see. Here we are today with episode number 6, Moving On Up.
Moving on up.
So please make sure to leave us a review or subscribe and check us out on our Facebook page, Investment Property Geeks. You can search for that in Facebook, should bring us up, or go to investmentpropertygeeks.com, or we'd love to hear from you. Fans are cool. Podcast at investmentpropertygeeks.com. If you want to talk about anything geeky, have any questions, or just feedback about the show, that would be great. And like we said before, please do help us boost this and make sure that other folks can hear it too. And the way we do that is by leaving a review or subscribing. So without further ado, this is the second time now I've said that, I think, in this series here.
It sounds good.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so without further ado, it's story time.
So this whole episode is dedicated, in case you haven't figured out already, to moving, tenant move-ins, and how that could be either a wonderful opportunity for everyone or an absolute nightmare. So I'm going to share a story of my own experience moving into a place. Now, this was not a single family home. This was an apartment when I was in college. I went to a larger Big Ten university in Pennsylvania, whose name shall remain anonymous. Let's see if people can figure that out.
Pennsylvania Community College.
That's it. Okay. Exactly.
That's what I thought.
Not in Scranton, though, where I am from. But no, I
wouldn't trust you. You probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't be sitting here today. No offense, if you went to like Scranton Community College. That's where Dwight Schrute went.
That is true. For reference and for yes, I'm not Dwight Schrute.
There's probably a group of people right now listening to this going, who's Dwight Schrute?
Oh, I'm so sad for those people.
I was going to say, for you people, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you the courtesy of explaining it.
Yeah, that's
what Google's for.
Look it up. It will be worth, especially there's a pandemic, there's not much else going on. Look up Dwight Schrute, go down that rabbit hole. You can thank us for it later. But we digress. My personal experience, moving is never fun. Everybody knows this.
No, moving sucks.
No, it's terrible. And I have now moved cross country twice. I've moved more than a dozen times in my life already. Every time to a new place that was kind of exciting and fun, once you are there, but the moving part in and of itself is absolutely horrible. So for me, going to that unnamed large school in Pennsylvania, not Scranton Community, I was moving into a brand new apartment complex, or let me rephrase, it was brand new the year before I was slated to move in. It was a nicer apartment complex. I had 3 other roommates. Each of us had our own bedroom and our own bathroom, which, in college, that's kind of like a luxury.
That's pretty nice. I think I shared a bathroom in a cinder block cage, basically, with 3 other dudes.
Right. And that's probably a little more standard for the normal college experience. I was pretty fortunate to be moving into this quote-unquote brand new place. The property had 1 million amenities, a barbecue pit, a sand volleyball court, a movie theater, heated swimming pool, you name it. It was pretty nice.
Wow, that's legit.
Well, it all sounds legit, and online it was great. And when I signed the lease 3 months before moving in, the model was great. Everything, it shows what it could look like. I was getting ready to move in. Again, this is, moving in. My parents are helping me. We get down. It's move-in day, the weekend at this large university. So there's myself and hundreds of other people waiting in line to check in, put in our deposits, get the keys. My parents kind of ran ahead while I was waiting in line to check on the apartment, because at that point we had the keys. It was absolutely, utterly trashed. Completely trashed. Now, again, it was built 10 months before. And yes, I get it. College kids can be destructive. But to the level of, bringing in a general contractor, repairing things, there was food left in the refrigerator.
Oh, that's pretty bad.
Oh, it was very bad. Absolutely horrible. So, that kind of set the stage for my entire experience living in that apartment. It got better, obviously, because it couldn't have got much worse than that first day. But proper care and due diligence and just checking on the property from a property management standpoint would have ensured that never happened. Nobody should have to go through that experience moving in. And again, it got better for me and it got better for my roommates, but it stands out in my mind, 20 years later. I'm dating myself here.
He went to school. Jesse went to school at 12.
Yeah, there we go. I like that. We'll go with that anyway.
He was a prodigy.
Doogie Howser. Remember that show?
No, that's before my time.
Oh, come on.
I think I saw reruns on Nick at Night or something.
Someone out there remembers Doogie Howser. But Doogie Howser, I am not. But again, we digress. The point is, we're going to talk a little bit more in this episode about why the move-in process, which already stressful, does not need to be that much more stressful. You want to make that process as easy as possible for everyone involved, the property owner, yourself as the property manager if you're doing that, and of course the tenant. A tenant needs to have those expectations set right out of the gate that you are providing a clean, safe, and non-food infested apartment, home, whatever the case might be.
So I have to ask you, Jesse, so you're like a super responsible, by the book, clean cut guy.
My bed's made every morning before I'm out of it. I'm one of those kind of nerds.
Wow,
so,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
so my question for you is, given how the condition of the property when you moved in, do you feel like when it came time to move out that last week or so, it's crunch time, you're getting ready to go, do you feel like it changed? Like, do you feel like you went back and you remembered, oh, this is how it was when I moved in? And so do you think it changed how much you cared about how you left it when you moved out?
Great question. I'm probably a little bit different of a person to ask because I did still care. And I still do. Yeah. But given the fact that you're moving into a property that is already trashed, my roommates were just like, well, this is horrible. Like what, how are they're not setting us up for success right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. So probably not just because you're that good of a guy.
Well, I don't want to say that, but
I think most people kind of go, well, better or as good as I found it.
Yeah.
So this is how I'm going to leave it.
Exactly. You have no incentive to make that property better just because of the condition in which you found it. So,
right.
Yeah.
It's like getting a really crummy rental car or something. And you're like, who cares if I jump a couple curbs with it or pull a U-turn when there's a median divider in the highway, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's like, what am I going to hurt?
Besides everything, potentially. Yeah,
exactly. Awesome. Cool.
Do you have any stories like that? Hopefully not.
Mine wasn't as bad though.
Yeah, well, that's good.
What I can say is, again, moving does stink. And so you're kind of, for a lot of people, they're at their low when they're moving.
Yep.
Like I know for me, and because I'm not going to talk about my wife Amy anymore, this isn't about her, but it is. Whenever we moved, we always told people like moving was the test of our relationship. And so we decided our last move that we did, we're like, well, we want to stay married, so we're going to hire someone else to do the move. It's like the previous, the previous moving experiences had just been so challenging. We're like, we know better.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of think about that if your tenants are going through the same type of emotions. And back to, what we said on here before is your tenant is your customer.
Absolutely.
As the owner of the property. And so it's not that you have to bend over backwards for every last thing that they want, but you have to have some empathy. Like, hey man, moving sucks. So let's try to make it as positive of an experience as possible. And you don't want them thinking when they open that door and walk in to the house for the first time, you want them to go, and then, wow, we could stay here for a while. Not, oh my word, what did we just do? How long is this lease again?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And I'll kind of piggyback. You want them to say versus ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that does happen. That's exactly what happened to us. And I imagine it happens to anyone else who has found themselves in a similar situation.
Yeah. And, turnover is going to be your biggest enemy in buy and hold real estate.
Yep.
And you can't always prevent that. But you can do some things to help reduce the likelihood that turnover is going to happen. And one of those things is just making sure that, folks have a great place to move into.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of, piggybacking on that and going into, why this is important. You're setting the stage for the entire relationship you're going to have with that tenant. You're setting the stage for the entire lease. As Chris mentioned, you want them walking in feeling a sense of relief. This is already a stressful enough situation. Let's not make it worse by having them move into a home that is absolutely trashed. It also gives you the opportunity to set expectations. Hey, this is the condition in which you're finding the home. This is how we are now presenting this home to you. This is how we expect it to be returned to us at the end of your lease, whenever that is. To your point, Chris, we're hoping if we get a great tenant, we can keep them for several years. Doesn't always work that way, but we try.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You want the folks to feel who maybe aren't quite comfortable keeping it to that standard. You want them to kind of get the squirmy feeling in their spine, right? Where they're like, oh boy, I better not slip up.
Yep.
And you don't want it to be where, folks who are used to kind of living slobbily, messily.
That's a word now.
It's definitely a word now.
It's on a podcast. So
we're gonna start a geek dictionary.
There it is.
Made up words. But you don't want the folks that are used to being messy to just feel like, oh, okay, my mess will just kind of blend right in.
Right.
And so, the dings on the wall and that kind of thing, you just don't want that. So
right.
We've seen that time and time again. I mean, there's a reason why Jesse has been saying those last couple episodes, like attracts like. It's just so true. And is, even me being in this business for several years and seeing hundreds of properties, I still just yesterday I was out at a property and I'm like, man, they did an okay job of leaving it, but like not as good as we normally see. And then I went back and I looked at the photos because the owner would only improve so many things. And I'm just like, well, there you have it. Like it wasn't perfect on Movin. Like it was okay, but it wasn't like that next level of nice,
Right.
And so that just attracts a certain type of person and sets a certain expectation. So anyway,
we've said this before and it does bear repeating. We owe a responsibility to the tenants to provide a clean, safe, habitable place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we want to give them the absolute best experience as possible. So, it's never just good enough. Just, well, maybe we'll patch up the walls. Maybe we'll take that food out of the refrigerator. I'm still bitter about that. But no, you want to make sure that property, for all the reasons you just mentioned, Chris, is in great shape for moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with that end, and I know we talked a little bit about this, already, begin with the end in mind. Think about move out. Think about, like Chris gave the follow-up question to my example, are you setting yourself up for success if you are moving them into a place that is not in good shape? You want to think to yourself, well, if they're maintaining this property and this property is in pretty awesome shape right now, that puts us in better shape going forward. So we want to think about the future. It's great to, you're worried about today, but you're always planning for the future in property management.
Well, and it's really hard, just practically speaking, when you're going to do a move out and there were stains on the carpet when you came in.
Yep.
Right. And the tenant puts on the move-in form stains on carpet. And now there's a red stain on the carpet. And you're trying to prove on move out that wasn't there on move in.
Right.
Good luck.
Yeah, the blue stain was here when I moved in. The red stain may or may not be me. So yeah,
you're going to be going to the tenant like, hey, you didn't mark that on your move-in. Yes, I did. I put stains on carpet. Well, you didn't put red stain.
Yeah, exactly. It just makes things that much harder for everybody.
Yeah, so. I mean, that sounds kind of petty, but it's true. You'll run into that stuff all the time. And just in general, if another thing would be like, if you go in and it's like, hey, what's the condition of this room? And they say poor.
Right.
Then how do you argue that later? So, anyway, well, that's all good, Jesse. And you're absolutely right. You got to begin with the end in mind. And we'll talk a little bit about what things to do as far as the inspection in a little bit, but let's back the train up just a little bit. So before the tenant moves in, we should mention a couple things as the manager of property, whether you're doing it on your own or for somebody else, you have someone else doing it for you. There are some things that are super important to make sure that the tenant has before they move in and that you have to ensure success. And a lot of these things are going to come from hey, you really don't want to have these things, but when you need them, you better have them.
Right.
And these are things that I think these are kind of the little nuggets I'll share with you, because we find owners that come to us when they have gotten themselves into some hot water with the tenant they're trying to get out, and they don't have these things. And oh my word, they usually will lose thousands of dollars in the process because the tenant can milk the stay,
Right.
and they know it.
Yep.
So first and foremost, when you took the application, which please, I hope you took an application, make sure on there you have a very legible and accurate social security number for every tenant, and I would even argue anyone 18 and over in the property. Social security number, full name, birthday, day, month, and year, and a very legible government issued photo ID. The reason that's important is because if you ever go to evict someone, the judge is going to want to make sure that you are not evicting someone who is active duty military. And there's really no way to prove that they're not active duty military unless you look them up using their social security number and birthday
Right.
in the database, or you get an affidavit saying from the tenant saying, or you sign an affidavit saying, hey, I spoke to the tenant and I know for sure no one in the household is active duty military. Well, guess what? When the tenant stops paying rent, they stop taking your phone calls too. So good luck getting that.
Right.
So get all that information ahead of time. I will tell you, probably 70% of the time when an owner comes to us and they're like, hey, I need help getting this tenant out, we say, okay, great. Can you give us the application? It's like, yeah, here it is. And it's scanned. It's like got coffee stains on it or red wine, and like they wrote in their first name, Bob, in like pencil. And then it says social security number, blank, birth date, 1982. References, mother. Like, it's just really bad. And I think what it happens to is it goes back to the last episode, one of the last ones we recorded, which was, how many, I think we as landlords, sometimes we get impatient and we get desperate because either the property wasn't really ready to be shown or something happened. And finally we get someone, we're like, yes, we got someone, and we don't get all the information. Well, guess what, folks? Sometimes they're not filling out the entire application on purpose because they have no intention of upholding their end of the bargain. And they know that if they don't give you all the info, it's just going to be an opportunity for them to delay later.
That's right.
So,
it seems easy to go for that low hanging fruit, and I hate to use that expression, but that's kind of what it is. If you get too desperate, you're going to end up making those mistakes, and every one of those tips is vital, in my opinion, for setting yourself up for success here.
Absolutely. The other thing we want to make sure too before folks move in is, that they got utilities transferred over to their name. So come up with some sort of form or something like that. We've got something standard that we use for every property. We note all the utility companies and we say, hey, you got to show that you've got utilities put in your name, and give us confirmation of the account numbers. Now, could they technically fudge something in? Yeah, sure. But the likelihood is if they're going to go through the trouble putting in what looks like a realistic account number, they probably did in fact call the utility company. So we just ask for that, and we want to make sure that that's all filled out prior to them moving in. So that's something too, because again, good luck. Once they move in, what's the incentive to get them to fill that out? Nada. Because now they're on your dime.
Right, exactly.
And then you got to go bill them back and all that stuff. It's just a nightmare. So it's a lot cleaner if you just kind of say up front, hey, look, I'll give you keys, but you got to show me proof that you got utilities transferred into your name. On that note too, I'll give you a little tip there. It's handy once at least here in North Carolina, and most places around the country, the utility companies can do this. Some utility companies won't, but there's something called like a revert to owner or revert to landlord agreement, usually, that you can put in place with most utility companies. And basically what that means is at any point in time, if there's a gap in payment or the account gets shut off, it'll come back into your name as the landlord or the property owner, or in our case, we set it up in our company's name for you. And that way, like if it's the middle of the winter and you forgot to go turn the gas back on, your pipes aren't going to freeze and break when the property's vacant. Or if it's the middle of the summer, you don't have to worry about AC kicking on or doing showings and, oh man, now there's no AC. It's 90 degrees in here and I can't show the property. So that's a little tip. Make sure you get set up those RTOs and stuff set up. And those usually will last for the lifetime of the property while you own it. And it's, it's not super easy to do, but it's pretty easy, I guess. And then, renter's insurance is the other big one. So we talked about this earlier too, but renter's insurance, and we'll go back and listen to our episode on risk mitigation in insurance, about why insurance is so important to have. But basically, this is going to save your bacon if the tenant does something stupid. Not intentional, not damage, but if they do something kind of dumb. And you really want to have that. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that the tenant has you or your property management company named on the policy. That way they can't just get the insurance and then they move in and they cancel it or they stop payment and you never know about it. You want to be named at least additional interest on the policy. If you're named additional interest, then what happens is the insurance company, if there are any changes to the policy, they mail you a notification that there's a change to the policy. So you can go, hey, whoa, Mr. Tenant, I just got a letter from XYZ insurance company that says you canceled. You're in breach of lease. Fix it or get out. So that's a handy little trick. And again, I would not let someone move in until they have shown me proof. There's like a little document that summarizes the coverages they have. We recommend at least $100,000 in liability coverage. And it better have your name or the company name's name who's managing the property and like their address on there saying additional interest. So another tip there.
It's that important. I couldn't agree more.
And hopefully you never have to use it.
Right.
Like, we've never had to use it for that purpose. We've had it where like, hey, a pipe broke in the building and the tenant had to move out and they had to file a claim with their insurance so they could get coverage to stay in a hotel while they couldn't rent the property. But we've never had to use it for tenant negligence. But my goodness, the day that we do, our owners are going to be pretty glad that it's there, I think. So, okay. Lastly, about the inspection. So in North Carolina, you don't have to have a move-in inspection by law. Some states you do, like Washington State, where we used to own property, you had to have a move-in inspection. And now I think even in Washington State, there's something about like it's got to be included with a lease or something like that. And it's weird, the timing of it. But anyway, here in North Carolina, things are a little bit lax. Don't do the minimum, folks. Don't. Just because the law says you don't have to doesn't mean it's a good idea. So do the move-in inspection. And I think, we see folks fail here a lot too. And don't do the old school like I used to get, which was room by room. Here is 2 inches of space, 4 lines for each room on carbon copy of what was the condition when you moved in. Do better than that.
Yeah.
If you have to go with the tenant, take your phone with you. Take a ton of photos.
Document.
Ideally, they're high resolution. Ideally, they're time stamped. Ideally, not necessary, but ours are time stamped and they're geo stamped too. So like if it ever had to go to court, someone would be like, well, that's not a picture of that refrigerator. That's from something else. And you could look up the geo stamp and be like, boom, it was taken at this date at this exact location. Argue that. Take lots of photos, make lots. Now, here's where we've got a software that we've invested in. That's awesome. That goes through and it color codes these by room, and it's got like, hey, for every room we want like walls, ceilings, windows and screens, window coverings, baseboards and flooring, switches and outlets, doors and doorknobs, fans and light fixtures, closet racks. Like it just kind of breaks everything out. And ideally you want to be able to kind of take things down to that detail. But at a minimum, get the photos of it, throw it in Dropbox or somewhere else that, backs up. Maybe you get a video too. Videos, unless you're really careful about it, can sometimes be harder to enforce. We've talked about the 360 camera before. If you've got a 360 camera, that's a pretty sweet way to do a move-in too. I'll give you a quick example of that. We had a good tenant, but they're moving out of a property. They kept it in pretty good shape, but there was like an area where the faucet had pulled away from the bathroom in the master bath on the bathtub. And it was going to be potentially a decent, expensive fix, because I won't get into the nitty gritty of it, but sometimes those are really hard to fix because this was an older faucet. And if you have to replace it, you have to cut in the drywall behind it and that kind of thing. So we're like, oh no, this is going to be some money. So we went back and the tenant's like, well, I didn't do that. And then we went back into the inspection, and on that inspection, we had happened to do one of those 360 photos, and you could zoom in and you could go, I didn't note it, but it wasn't like that, like on Movin. You could see in the photo how it was. Send it to the tenant and say, hey, really sorry, but the photo shows that it wasn't like this on Movin. Please see attached. And then it just ends the argument.
There you go.
So that was a good one. We've also had an owner who said, hey, it was actually that same property, believe it or not. The owner was like, my screen door, there are these little, now I'm going to totally forget the name of it, dampers on the screen door that help it from slamming shut, the storm door. And one of the dampers was missing. And the owner was like, the damper was missing. Tenant broke it. I want them to pay. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that damper wasn't there. And sure enough, same thing, 360 photo, hadn't noted that it was missing because there was one on the top. Went back, sent her the photo, say, this was taken on this date and this time, please see attached.
Like you said, it ends the argument, so.
I don't know what else to say.
There you go.
Picture's worth 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
So you just never know when that thing's going to kind of come, when that's going to help you out. And it's way easier when you come out to do the security deposit, when you can show photos of folks and say, yeah, hey, we've got a bajillion photos, and then here's the befores, here's the afters, and just make sure you got a good, clean way to kind of organize that. Maybe put yourself together a little list and Excel or something. I don't know. Do something to send it to the tenant, and then make sure that you're getting that inspection back within like 3 business days or something of the lease being done. And you can go out and you can do the inspection with the tenant. If you don't have a program or a solid form or way to kind of get it done, I might recommend that you go out there with the tenant. But do me a favor, have the tenant lead you through the property and have them take photos on their phone and then tell them how to send them to you. And then you also point out the things that were already broken so that they feel like it's fair and you're not just hiding the things that are broken.
Yep.
Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to get to a position where you're at the end of the lease and they go, well, yeah, but you're the one, Mr. Landlord, who took all the photos. I didn't take them. And it's your fault that you didn't capture that stain that was in the floor before. So that was really wordy. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm getting bored listening to my own voice.
Sometimes Chris is, you pull a string and just let him go, but he's that passionate about property management and he knows his stuff. So it's good. It's good stuff. It's good information.
Well, we said, Jesse and I were talking before, we're like, man, this might be a shorter episode.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, don't let the brevity of the episode underscore or take away from the importance of this. Move-ins, as hopefully you're getting from this podcast and from this episode, it's a very, very important part of property management. Again, it's stressful. It can set the tone for the entire relationship you're going to have with the tenant. It could make or break really that relationship, in my opinion. I think that's kind of a fair statement to make, like right out of the gate.
And I think too, part of this is, like you said, with the relationship with the tenant and setting the expectation is really what the expectation you're trying to set going into this is, hey, look, we want you to feel like you live in a really nice place.
Exactly.
That's safe and functional and that you're proud to call home. And so this is really to make sure that we are providing that space for you and to catch anything that we might have missed.
Right.
As well as, like, let's be honest, folks, it is way easier to disposition a security deposit when you can give the whole thing back.
Oh, yeah.
I love it when we can give back a whole security deposit.
Absolutely.
I tell tenants, we put it right on our move out checklist. It is our goal for you to get back your entire security deposit because it's way easier for everybody. So please do all of these things so you can get back your entire security deposit, because we don't want to go through and itemize everything and wait for things to, cash and the tenant to be going, when am I going to get my security deposit? And I didn't break that. Why was that a $7 charge? And then you got to explain that. And,
right.
But I mean, we're going to do everything we can. We're going to take as much from the security deposit as is allowed by law and that belongs to the owner. But I would much rather go into a property and go, wow, I don't even have to clean it. This looks great.
That's
full refund.
I've worked with several tenants in the past, and at that move-in inspection or as they're signing a lease, they basically said, my goal is to get every penny of my security deposit back. And I mean, that's music to your ears.
Yes.
That's, you want, you're setting the expectation, they're setting their own expectation that they're going to get every penny back. And to Chris's point, if you can give them all of their money back, not only have you done their job,
they've done your job.
They've done your job. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll go with that.
Jesse looks a little confused.
It's late in the day. I'm starting to sundown here. I mean, it's getting sad.
We got to start recording this in the morning.
Yeah, we really do. We really, really do. Or just get some caffeine here. So, but yeah, I think you made a lot of valid points in terms of certain things you can do as the owner or the property manager to set yourself up for success. So if you want to go back and listen through and write down some of those tips that Chris had in terms of tenant screening and some of the information you want to be sure you have from any tenant, unless you want to reiterate that, or do you think?
Well, you mean as far as
the tips for making sure you're setting up yourself for success.
Oh, yeah.
The social security number.
Yeah, yes. So again, make sure you got the social security number, birth date, their photo ID. I don't know if I mentioned this, but make sure you get to their pay stubs.
Yep.
And ideally references.
Yeah.
And this is a little trick. So get their personal references in addition to their landlord references,
right.
Because if you got to hunt someone down later, guess what? You got their personal references. So now you can go tell grandma, hey, grandma, looking for Susie Jane, who owes me $2,000 in back rent. When you see her, let her know I called.
Wonder if that's still going to be the favorite grandchild after that,
Yeah, so a little, it's not that you have to do that very often, but that's a little trick. So make an application, a field on your application if you can for emergency contact. Yep. And oftentimes folks will put down, a spouse or a son or a parent or something like that. So that might be a little bit helpful to you. Or you can do kind of personal references, and you can just check ahead of time and make sure that the personal references who they say they are, give them a call during the application process or something like that. Now you've got one more thing. Now, what's the likelihood if someone gets to the point where they're not paying you that person's really going to help you? I don't know, but it doesn't hurt, and it's really easy information for you.
You've got something in your arsenal anyway.
Yeah.
So,
and it is helpful in case, hey, stuff happens to people when they're living in homes. Let's not go down all the morbid things that could happen, but if you're in the very unfortunate circumstance where something did happen to your tenant and you're kind of the first person to find out, you do want to have kind of next of kin to contact and whatnot. So
no, valid point.
Make sure you get all that. Another tip, just kind of for getting this inspection done again is like Jesse said, just tell them at the beginning, hey, my goal, I want you to get all your security deposit back. So let's be extra thorough. And if we're extra thorough, then that helps you defend your position that none of this stuff was damage that you caused. So
exactly.
Yeah. Yep. And I think, I think that's, we have a few more things, but I think by and far, that's kind of the majority of how to do a good, solid move-in. And then I guess the next thing would just be anything that comes back on that move-in, go take care of it right away. Mm-hmm. Have a process set up where if they come back and they're like, yeah, toilet leaks, or it doesn't sit around for 2 or 3 months before you get around to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, keep the tips Chris just mentioned and reiterated in mind. They're great tips. And also, if nothing else, start with the end in mind. Think about the end of that relationship you're going to have with the tenant. Think about setting them up for success to have a nice place to live for the duration of that lease. But then also think, hey, we're going to need to turn this property over. Let's make sure it is in as good a condition as we are leaving it for the tenant.
Absolutely.
And I think, like you said, Chris, we can probably beat this horse to death, but I think that more or less ties a bow on the conversation. So with that, thank you so much for listening. We certainly do appreciate, as Chris said at the beginning, all the new likes, all the new clicks. Hopefully I'm going to get my mom to start listening to this now. So if nothing else, we'll get, if we can get the moms on board, then I know we've made it.
You can regain your place's favorite child.
There you go. Well, that's tough. Mom loves my brother. But, we do appreciate, feel free to like us on Facebook. Be sure to subscribe. And of course you can reach back out to us at, what is our
podcast at investmentpropertygeeks.com.
I should know that without having to think.
Yes, please do memorize it.
Absolutely. But with that, this is Jesse
and Chris
wishing you a brighter life through real estate. Thanks for listening.